Thank thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's like a dream come true to have you speak to our teachers, and technology has made it possible. Pandemic has given rise to the creative confidence and innovation, I must say. But we'll learn from you how to make it a culture
Mhm.
today. So Aadharshila was a product of that kind of creativity or innovation, you may say, and that has brought 60 such people like you on this platform. So it's
Thank you.
three.
Thank you for having me here. And
I was
yeah,
persistent and relentless in bringing you here, and didn't leave you, didn't
yeah.
leave any stone unturned in having you here. And ma'am has been through some tough times, health wise and otherwise, as many of the people have been, but she has been kind enough to create time for us and be here with us finally. So it's 3:30, and we formally begin with the session with ma'am's permission. Dear friends, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have you week after week with us every Monday at Aadharshila Talks at RRIS. I extend a warm welcome to all of you at the 60th Aadharshila Talks at RRIS. It is such a great opportunity to meet speakers who inspire us week after week. We have another inspiring personality with us who has made a mark for herself when it comes to education, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to creativity. I'm personally a big fan. Ma'am might not know much about me or how much I admire her initiatives, but yes, I have been following her work on social media, have been reading whatever she writes. It's whether it's about parenting, it is about education. There is a lot to take away from what she writes and what she speaks. Let me introduce formally the speaker for the day, Ms Avnita Bir. On behalf of Ramratna International School family, I, Dr. Jaya Parekh, the principal, extends a warm welcome to our speaker. Ma'am is the principal of R.N. Poddar School, Mumbai, an economics graduate from Lady Shri Ram College and postgraduate in economics from Delhi School of Economics. Mrs. Bir has worked in the field of education for over 3.5 decades. She has served the governing body of CBSE and is the recipient of the prestigious National Award for Teachers conferred by the Honorable President of India. She has also been honored by the President of Singapore for her contribution to education. Ma'am is a member of the advisory board of Google's Global Edu.org. She is the Microsoft Mentor School Awardee for Innovation in Education Initiative. With her urge to bring the best educational thought to India, she has co-curated the Learn Shift India, that is LSI conference in India, in collaboration with the renowned global education thinker Simon Breakspeare. Ms. Avnita is the pioneer of piloting TED Club in schools across India, a technology enthusiast, passionate about integrating technology and best practices in education. Ma'am also writes extensively on parenting for the Times of India. Mrs. Bir currently heads the R.N. Poddar School in Mumbai. It's humbling and truly an honor to have you, ma'am, as an Aadharshila speaker. I bow in gratitude and reverence. Please accept our warm welcome and a big thanks. We look forward to learning from you about building a culture of creative confidence and innovation in our schools, in our classrooms, in the society we live. We would hear from ma'am how to operate in today's VUCA world, how to embrace challenges, how to handle paradoxes, how to build trust, confidence, and courage, and how to maximize stakeholder interests. So, friends, let us all be ready to learn new things, as innovation is the unrelenting drive to break the status quo and develop a new where few have dared to go. With this beautiful quote, I invite you all to be with us in today's learning journey. Ma'am, it's over to you now. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the very, very warm welcome, dear ma'am. And it is such a pleasure to be part of the Aadharshila Talks series. I have been following it, even though maybe not very overtly, but I have been following all the talks that have, that have taken place. And what an amazing initiative. I must say that I was inspired by the initiative itself. And so when I was thinking of what I should be speaking on, this thought that, you've been sharing, what Aadharshila Talks, this entire series has done for educators and for schools in this last 1.5 years, ever since we were hit by the pandemic, and helping educators to cope with the challenges that we were thrown into. I think it's been a great, support for educators to be able to, have a platform where they could share their, anxieties, their successes, their learnings. And that is exactly what I have always dreamt about, where, knowledge would be shared freely, where I always used to feel that educators don't share. I mean, they're very closed about, their lesson plans, their ideas. And this is the first time I'm seeing that the world has opened up for educators, and the kind of networking that has happened, the kind of sharing and outpouring of ideas that has happened in the field of education is really, really heartening for me, especially because I'm now almost at the end of my, career, having spent 3.5 decades here. It's very heartening that, I'm seeing this day happen. It's always been, I've been on this mission to change the way people look at education, the way people look at teaching as a profession, the way teachers look at their own themselves as as teachers and as professionals. And that has happened, and that's been a great a win-win, I would say, a great side effect of the pandemic. And initiatives like the Aadharshila Talks has really contributed significantly for that. And so my heartfelt compliments for this initiative. It's helped us to stay together. It's helped us to bind together and bond together, and that, I think, is a great outcome. So I wanted to start with that. In fact, my entire theme and my topic today is going to be, it's nothing new. It is only a refresher course. It's not new knowledge. It's something that we all know about. And I'm just going to be, I've actually, curated most of what I'm saying from my, over the years, my presentations, what I've been sharing, what I've been thinking, what I've been doing. And so it's nothing really new, but I hope you will indulge me when I share this journey of mine of over 3.5 decades. So
it's a privilege, ma'am. It's a privilege.
Thank you so much.
To be part of this journey.
I do remember that in early years, when I would have to speak to parents or to educators or to teachers, a lot of it came from, because one was not so experienced, so one would speak about ideas which were from the textbooks or from journals. Whereas today I feel that when I speak, it's actually the years of experience that I've had, and so I generally feel that it comes with that much more weightage. So again, like I said, my entire talk is going to be like a conversation. It's something like a refresher course for all of us, nothing new, but important for us, worthwhile for us to remember these, thoughts, these ideas, these lessons that we've learned over the years. Very, very important to keep revisiting them. And of course, they come back with, even more of value, because we've added some more experience to those thoughts. Okay, so that's what I'm going to start with. And if I can share my presentation. Okay, wait, I have to go back. Yeah. So I go back to the year 2015, and I was gifted this book called Creative Confidence by Tom Kelly and David Kelly from IDEO. And it was, I think, one of the best gifts I could have ever received from a dear friend from Palo Alto. And he and I shared a Google platform in the year 2014, and we got along so well, and our thoughts were so alike. And it was such a heartening feeling that across the world, wherever you go, educators have the same challenges, they have the same thoughts, they have the same dreams. And so he had gifted me this book called Creative Confidence, and it enjoys the pride of place in my library. So of course, I'm right now in Delhi, so could not really access the book, but I did pull out a few quotes, and I'm going to read them out a little bit, some of them, and I want all the audience members and to just maybe take note of the key elements in each quote. And I begin by the first one, where is at the core, creative confidence is about believing in your ability to create change in the world around you. And of course, change has today has been thrust upon us. We've all as educators oftentimes have spoken about change being a constant and change being inevitable, and so many times we've told our students to write maybe essays on the topic. But this is the first time, if you ask me, this is the first time we're actually living that change. We're actually experiencing the change that we've always been talking about. It's like the proverbial wolf that has actually that has finally come into our lives, and we've had to face it, we've had to live through it, and we've had to adapt to it. So if we go back to creative confidence, it's actually the ability to not only deal with change, but to also create change, the kind of change that we want to see around us. Okay, so I would maybe urge all the audience to maybe write down what you think is an important term here. The second quote is, sometimes simply changes in perspective can spark new insights. If you let go of what you know, you can start to look at things with fresh eyes and with more questions than answers. But the real insights come from getting out into the world and gaining empathy with the people whose lives you want to improve. Okay? Again, some very important messages, key elements that are being thrown up in this quote. Whether you consider yourself a born innovator or are new to creative confidence, you can get better faster at coming up with new ideas if you give yourself and those around you the leeway to make mistakes from time to time. Permission to fail comes more easily in some settings than others. That combination of thought and action defines creative confidence, the ability to come up with new ideas and the courage to try them out. Striving for perfection can get in the way during the early stages of the creative process. There's no such thing as creative people and non-creative people. There are only people who use their creativity and people who don't. So all of us have creativity within us. Creative confidence is about believing in your ability to create change in the world around you. There is no innovation and creativity without failure. Creativity helps us fight off the monotony of everyday life. I think very important for teachers, for educators, not to become complacent, not to let the disenchantment set in, but to keep working on your own, profession, your own calling, and get rid of the monotony of routine. Part of creative confidence is the willingness to try. Okay. Inhale courage, exhale fear. Very important elements of creative confidence and innovation. Constraints can spur creativity and incite action as long as you have the confidence to embrace them. The creative person is willing to live with ambiguity. He doesn't need problems solved immediately and can afford to wait for the right ideas. Creativity requires the courage to let go of the certainties. Okay? So I hope you've got some important elements from here, and if I were to look at what I found very relevant about creative confidence and about creativity and innovation are words like believing in your ability to create change, changing your perspective and to be open to new ideas, to allow fresh ideas to come in. Empathy is an important part. Empathy for the people around you is a very important part. A combination of thought and action. Not it's about not just new ideas, but the willingness and courage. The willingness and the courage to try them out. I think very important words there. The courage. I think it's something that we often do not think we need. We as adults we don't talk about courage, but I think we need courage, and courage comes from being fearless, from not being scared of failure. Okay, not obsessing over perfection. Again, is something very important, which I share with my children often. I said, don't think that you have to write the most perfect statement of purpose or the most perfect profile, because if you have a perfect profile, what is the scope for growth left then? So don't try to be perfect. We all work in progress. try to accept the vulnerabilities, the weaknesses, the challenges that you face in your life, and work on that. Accept the failures, accept the weaknesses. So again, very important that we do not get overly obsessive about perfection. Let us be on the path towards perfection, but not really reach that destination of saying I've become perfect. Okay, accepting that failure is a part of innovation. Letting go of certainties. Again, we're going to be talking about the VUCA world, and we're saying we're living in a period of uncertainty. So that itself is actually sowing the seeds of creative confidence, letting go of certainties and being comfortable with uncertainties in our lives. Living with ambiguity, again, something which is not very easy to do when we don't know whether we're on the right path, when we're groping in the dark and living with ambiguity. How do we deal with that ambiguity? That again is something that sows the seed of innovation.
Excuse me, ma'am. Just wanted to check if you're moving the slides.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Oh.
I'm going to, yeah. Okay, I just left the second slide. Or you want me to go back to the previous slide?
No, it's okay. We just wanted to check if it's moving.
No, I'm not going to, but I think it has got stuck. I think my slide has got stuck.
We see this slide setting the context.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think it's so sensitive, the mouse, that it keeps moving. Yeah. Okay. Is it okay?
We have gone one slide back to the books.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Now, is it okay now? Yeah. Yeah. So I was talking about, again, some of the key elements of creative confidence, embracing constraints and challenges. And I think that's something that the city of Mumbai really kind of taught me. It's a city where there is a space crunch, there is a time constraint, and then it translates into so many challenges that we face in our, day-to-day work. I found that, coming to Mumbai, and I moved here about 20 years ago, I found that I learned to become a better problem solver, a more creative person, because I had to learn to deal with constraints, to accept and embrace challenges and find a way out. If I needed to do something and there were challenges along the way, I had to embrace them, and that is how I was able to overcome them. So that is another important part of creative confidence, building creative confidence and innovation. Looking for opportunities in the constraints. Again, something that we've all learned, I think, during this period when we've been struck by the pandemic, having to overnight, been thrown into thrown out of gear and into the online, into the digital medium, digital education. The way we've been able to embrace, we've been able to look for opportunities in that. And I think Aadharshila Talks itself is one of the opportunities that you have availed of in times of digital education. Not letting the disenchantment set in. Again, very important. That's one of the good things about change and about constraints, that because you're trying to overcome the changes, the constraints and the challenges, you are constantly then working on it and not letting the monotony of the routine work set in. Okay, so setting the context, and this is the context to the talk that I'm going to be giving, which is about change and about the VUCA world, and about how do we operate, how do schools and educators operate in a world of which is characterized by so much of unprecedented exponential change. Change has always been there, but the kind of change that we've seen in the last 1.5 years that we've had to, especially for educators, has been completely unpredictable. It has been exponential, and we've had to adapt, and we've had to be agile enough to embrace and to deal with that change. So something which I think as educators, I used to always feel that the biggest danger, the biggest threat to teachers and educators is that of complacency. When we think that we know what we are teaching, we've been teaching over the years, so the same thing over and over again, and so we know it like the back of your hand, and then we tend to become complacent. I think that is the biggest threat to educators. So the goal to be a lifelong learner, and that's what I was listening to your to your introduction, the video that you were sharing, it's all about continuously learning, okay, and being on the move. And I think that's something that change makes you do. So I like this phrase, nothing is predictable except the unpredictable. These are the times that we're living in. And if we move to the next, the VUCA world. Okay, now the VUCA world is a jargon which I heard about, I think, a couple of years ago. Just as new words keep getting added to our vocabulary. This is a word that I was very fascinated by, because I always used to think that ambiguity and uncertainty and complexity were all more or less the same thing. Okay, and it's all resulting from the change that we see around us. But there is there is a fine line between all these four aspects of the VUCA world that we're living in. We're talking about ambiguity, which is lack of clarity about meaning of an event. Uncertainty means being unclear about the present. Volatility is the rate of change, and like I said, the rate of change today is exponential. So while schools were changing, but they were changing in a linear form, the change that we see today, okay, around us is exponential change. Complexity, that means there are multiple key decision factors, and especially in education, where we're dealing with multiple stakeholders. How do we deal with the complexity? And again, if you look at them on the scale of how much do you know about the situation, and you'll find that uncertainty is more about not knowing about the situation. Ambiguity has little less of that. How much, and on the vertical scale, we say how well can you predict the outcome of your actions. Okay, so ambiguity has less of that, complexity has more. So this is a scale that I found which helps you to understand that we are not just talking about constant, or we are not just talking about linear change, we're talking about exponential change. And how do we deal with this exponential change? Okay, so again, I thought about what is it, and this 1.5 years has given us a big kind of a window to look into our own ways of adapting to change, and think what was it that helped us or held us in good stead. And I would say, for example, from my experience and our experience as a school, was that we were mentally, because we'd been a technology savvy school, and we've always been enthusiastic about technology. So our mental as well as preparedness in terms of skill sets was very high, and so we were overnight able to adapt to the change that was thrust upon us. So in a VUCA world, you need to be agile. You need to be able to adjust and respond quickly to the change that you see around you, staying ahead, and being on top of the learning curve. Okay. So mental preparedness, and also preparedness in terms of skill sets. Second is, you need to have information. You need to be able to collect data, generate hypotheses, test it, loop in the feedback, and to be able to cope with ambiguity, because there will not be any certain answers. Reduce response time to deal with this ambiguity. Tap all the available resources and networks. I think, again, I go back to Aadharshila Talks, and the way you've been able to tap not just, resources in the country, but even abroad. I think that's the way forward. That's how you deal. That's how you grab, or you capture the opportunity in an adversity, and you run with it. Okay, I think networks that were limited so far. The way we've been able to expand and exploit those networks, whether it is in terms of the parents as our resources, or resource people, or alumni who are spread far and wide across the globe. I think our networks really expanded, our resources really expanded during this pandemic time. So I think, again, I look at change as something which is going to give you the opportunity to overcome and to learn to look at opportunity in the adversity. Okay, and that's what I think educators and schools have been doing so far. Restructuring, bringing in or outsourcing to specialists in an increasingly complex world. So we have to be comfortable with the fact that not all solutions will be available within our means, okay, within ourselves. So it's important, therefore, to reach out, to restructure the way you do your work, the way you carry out your business of education. How do you outsource to some specialists in an increasingly complex world? So there, for example, how we've had to reach out to technology companies, okay, to technology experts in order to help us to deal with, with the change that was thrust upon us. Experimenting fearlessly. Again, the key word, word that I want to underline is fearless. I think if we have to, cope with change, and if we have to be creative, and if we have to, innovate and think of new ideas, we have to be fearless. And I think that's the culture that we need to create in our institution, because most often, why people do not try out new ideas, why they do not, innovate, or why they don't get new ways of doing their work, is because they're afraid of failure. And I think that fear we have to remove, and that's a culture that we have to create, a culture of fearlessness. That's the only way we can experiment and expand possibilities inherent in the change. Okay, like I said, there is, in every adversity there is an opportunity. So if we have to expand the possibilities in the change, we need to therefore be fearless and become ingenious problem solvers. Again, I think it's, in a very, very practical terms, creativity and innovation on a daily basis actually boils down to being creative problem solvers. We face problems and we solve those problems as we go along. And as we go along and keep solving problems, we find that we're becoming more and more creative. So I found myself, for example, that I've become a much more creative problem solver after coming to the city of Mumbai. Okay, and with the use of technology. So these two things have actually helped me to become a better, more creative. I do not get scared of a problem when I face it, So, and finally, of course, because we have multiple stakeholders, it's so important that we constantly keep our stakeholders, informed, and we're constantly interacting with our stakeholders, and we try to maximize stakeholder interest. So, yeah.
So we are following you thoroughly, enjoying the talk. There is a hand raised. Would you like to take a question at this moment?
Yes, I would definitely, yes.
So Rajalakshmi ji, you can unmute yourself and please share your question or thought. Maybe it's by mistake. Okay, ma'am, please.
Any thoughts, if anybody would like this point of time? It'll be nice if we can, have some kind of conversation interaction. Yes.
Right. So we have been receiving some thoughts which were in sync with what you were saying. Yes, I think Rajalakshmi ji is now unmuted herself.
Yeah. Yes, Raj.
By mistake only.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. But I'd really love to hear your thoughts if you have any to share. Okay? Because this is like, we're all talking about sharing. We're talking about, embracing, this community of, educators, and talking, and having a conversation. I think that's very important. Yeah. So
I do agree with your thoughts, because even talking now also is a hesitation, because we think that we may make a failure.
Yeah. Yes.
So
I know.
we hesitate to give our points also in between, because we think that we may commit a mistake, and we are waiting for a perfect moment.
I just spoke about, I said, we're always going to be work in progress. So there will never be a point time for anything. So let's just make the most of the present, So, and I think, I'm actually very excited about, our present time that we're living in, because I feel that minds have opened up and the possibilities are, immense now. I mean, today, if you ask me, if the CBSE board, I'm in Delhi right now, and they've asked me to, help them. I'm on the committee for the examination, setting up papers, and the kind of challenges that we are facing. I mean, and the board is facing, and they're throwing it at us, and it's like, can you do a pilot exam tomorrow? Okay, which means that I have to set the paper, and I'm in Delhi, and I have to tell my teachers, can you set the paper and administer the exam tomorrow, and by the day after, can you give us the report? Okay, and today I don't feel scared that I can. How will I do it? And believe me, again, we are living in a time where teachers and students, all of us are ready to take on any kind of challenge that is coming our way. And I think that's what is very exciting, very, very exciting, because educators and education was not like that in some years ago. Okay, so for me, that's that disruption that has happened, and this whole excitement, that you feel the adrenaline flowing, and that you are able to take on bigger and bigger challenges, is very exciting for me. So, like I say, I keep using this word. I feel I can see green shoots starting to emerge. Okay, and I feel we need to quickly leverage the advantage that we have right now. There may be a disequilibrium, and again, something which I feel very strongly about, that a disequilibrium is necessary for us to reach a new higher equilibrium. So
I agree with
every
you,
time
ma'am.
there's a disruption, we're going to actually raise the bar for ourselves, and we'll reach a higher equilibrium. We'll have a new normal. When we're talking about the new normal, it's a new equilibrium that we're talking about, which would be a higher equilibrium compared to the earlier one. Okay, so we're actually poised to take that leap.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree with you, and it feels like we are all evolving.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's not just that slow evolution
Yes.
process. We have all witnessed the biological evolution, but I feel in every aspect we are evolving, and again, it is exponential.
Yes, exactly. And now I have gone. My slide is gone. Okay, yeah. So closer home. Okay, wait a minute. On the Mac, this is such a sensitive mouse that it just moves. Okay, so I'm just looking at, I mean, again, this is an old presentation that I had, made, which like I said, I curated from it. What are the lessons that we learned about change? Okay, and I remember that we started experimenting a lot after the CBSE, kind of when the CCE was announced. Okay, so 1 minute, let me just go to the slide. Yes, and that was when I realized that the way we were functioning, everything was manual, right? Most of our, apart from maybe a learning management system that a school would have, most of our academic processes were still very, very manually done, right? And when the CCE was announced, I remember coming back and thinking that we need to use some kind of a technology solution to be able to cope with the myriad challenges that CCE was going to throw at the teachers. The amount of work the teachers had to do, okay, in terms of doing a continuous and comprehensive evaluation of students, right? And the new pattern that was being introduced, I felt we needed a technology solution, and that's when we started to open our minds to embracing technology to make our processes more efficient, our academic processes more efficient. So I think what was important was to be open to the winds of change. Okay, very important. That's how that's how we will learn to deal with change in an agile manner. Collaborate with partners. Again, it's not necessary that it is not possible that we will have all the solutions within us. We'll have to we'll have to collaborate with partners and become a learning lab. Okay, so
Ma'am, I remember in 2009, I had been to your school as a teacher of science, and a part of your workshop on CCE, the pilot on CCE, before CCE was formally launched in CBSE.
Yes,
so
yes.
We have all been a witness to how we need to collaborate, think together, work together to bring that change.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is something that, and again, this is a presentation that I have actually taken from that time. Okay, and this is the change that we, for example, in our school, kind of these are the various initiatives that we took over the years. Where we took stock of our internal resources. we actually, did some workshops on design thinking and said, how do we use that in order to bring about better processes in our own school? How do we personalize learning? And that's what led me to actually the flipped classroom, using the Khan Academy, doing a pilot with Khan Academy, and then bringing in the flipped classroom model in the school. Then we, of course, we were using Google Apps. I think we were one of the earliest schools to embrace the Google suite of apps. And again, that we were a school which never ever bought any technology. It was all, we were looking at the cloud and what all apps we could, whatever the technologies that it would give us, and all of them worked together in sync, and each one led us from one advantage point to a next, and the whole world opened up for us. I think that's what technology did for us. It opened up the world to us, okay? Because we were trying to see what are the other schools across the world doing, how are they facing or handling that or led us from one initiative to the next. And of course, then we became an Ashoka Changemaker School. Again, every little thing that the change that we brought about in school, every initiative that we introduced in the school, made us learn something more. Because you see, when we went for the selection to be an Ashoka Changemaker School, and it was all built on whether there is a culture of empathy in the school. Now, a mainstream school like ours with 3,000 students in a small building, how do we where we working in 2 shifts? How do we build empathy? And you see, and then empathy became a big part of our vocabulary. So external partnerships again. So these are all the things that we put in place as we went along from facing one challenge to the next. Okay, and of course, there were hiccups. Okay, we of course had to lean on, for example, Simon Breakspear, because he was an educational thinker and a global educationist, and we often took advice for him. I remember when we introduced the flipped model, and I felt that it was not as successful. I was not being able to convert or convince my entire staff on the merits of the model. And he said, you have to actually follow the bell curve method, identify who are your champions, who are the early adopters, and work with them, and then the change will spread across the entire staff, and that's what worked. So we learned along the way. We learned how to handle change, okay, and how to pilot and bring about change. And again, another thing which he said, which is I've held very close to my heart, is celebrating small successes. What happens? We generally celebrate big successes when we have very great news, we have very good results. We celebrate that. We forget to celebrate small achievements, small accomplishments. And I think it's very important in order for the culture, the school culture, to be one of constantly wanting to try new ideas, failing and getting up and brushing the dust away, and again moving forward. It means that we also celebrate small successes along the way. So that I thought was a very important lesson. And again, some of the thoughts which my teachers shared about change. And I want to read one particular one. This is of Noshina Syed, and she's a math teacher, the primary school teacher. And she said, I remember when I joined school, I told her that we will make this school paperless school, and she couldn't believe it. And so what she said is, I used to think that this is the maximum techie that I can be. How wrong I was. At RN Podar, each day is a new beginning. We've started using Chromebooks in classrooms. Thus, whatever comes as a change is important. In the process, I've learned to turn things around, and that I am possible. Okay, so she started to believe in herself. Okay, so I think getting the teachers starting to take pride in the work that they were doing. I think that's so important, because unless your teachers, because a school, who forms the core of their school, it is the teachers in the classroom who will bring about the change for the children in the education of our students, is the teachers. Okay, so and I found that these little imperceptible changes that I saw in my teachers, okay, starting to feel proud of the work that they were doing, valuing the work that they were doing, okay. And again, this came from the fact that they never thought they could learn learn technology. And when they started to do small things like making a Google Calendar and sharing it with their colleagues, okay, that itself gave them so much joy. That's just the first, breaking that inhibition, okay, and then moving forward. Okay, that itself did wonders for the teachers. So the culture became that of trying out new ideas, not being scared of failing, and then moving on and on. Okay, of course, along the way, we also have to remember that there were certain non-negotiables. Okay, because as we're moving on and we try changing so many structures around us, it was very important that we keep cognizant of some important non-negotiables. For example, we are an academic educational institution, right? And the children come to us. Our parents have very high expectations from the school, especially with respect to their children's educational standards. Okay, so achieving academic excellence was never negotiable. It is non-negotiable. So we had to ensure that, and so once we set those processes in place and the parents started to believe and trust that the school will not let their children down in terms of the academic standards, they started to enjoy the experimentation. They joined us in the innovative ideas, new ideas, and they were not scared that the school is going to let their children down. Okay, we also said that we were also ready for the future, the uncertain tomorrow. So we said we have to also build skills in order for us to be able to face the uncertainty tomorrow. And that's what we saw during, when the lockdown happened. Again, something which I feel very extremely heartened about my school is that anybody who comes to the school says, you have a very happy school. The children are all the time. And the best time to see that is when the children are leaving after dispersal. Okay, a dispersal time. When you see the children's excited faces, happy faces, you feel that you've done a great job, and it's a happy school that you've created, a school which has a head, a heart, and a soul. I mean, that's been our great dream, and that's something that has been, for me, the greatest reward, the greatest satisfaction. Okay, where we've transformed from a school that students trusted to a school that now trusted its students. Okay. Okay, now moving on to, so what is it that, like I spoke about change, okay, and what helped us to change, and what are the lessons that we learned about change, okay? Like I said, teachers are the most prone to form very die-hard habits. It's, by default, a teacher will turn to the blackboard to write on the blackboard and use the blackboard. By default, the teacher will use a PPT, and the children are not interested. And, so how do we change that habit? Okay. How do we change classroom practice? By changing that habit. How do we change that? And that's a very big challenge for teachers. Okay. Because even when we were doing the flipped model, the default for teachers was to start giving the lecture again. The children have already gone through the lesson, and when they came to class, the teachers were supposed to be, kind of taking off from that. The children have already familiarized themselves with the concept. Now you have to take them to a level higher. But the teacher's default was to go back to giving direct instruction, to give a lecture. Okay? And that was very difficult to change. That was our biggest challenge. In fact, we didn't anticipate that the biggest challenge to flip would come not from the students, but from the teachers, because they were so used to, so conditioned to giving a lecture in a classroom. Okay? So what is important is that we break these habits, and we have to break by doing, and how do we do that? By breaking inhibitions and giving them confidence that we can go on to do more. Okay? Anybody wants to say something?
I think it's by mistake.
Okay.
I request KG9 Bengali second language to kindly mute yourself. Ma'am, towards the end, if we have time, and if you wish, I would like you to throw some light on flipped learning for those who aren't versed with it.
Absolutely. I would.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, and you see, when you take a small step and you repeat it again and again, okay, it's by repetition that you start to get out of an old habit. Okay, and of course, what is needed is a very, very supportive ecosystem, and that ecosystem is what we talk about is what we refer to as the culture of the school, where exchange of ideas takes place, where people are not scared to voice their thoughts or their new ideas, even if they're not confident about that. Where everybody is struggling together, where somebody comes up with a new idea and shares with her his or her colleagues, finding new ways of handling challenges. And I think that would actually become a motivation for them to try out new ideas. Okay, so providing that environment, providing that kind of a non-threatening space to teachers to try out new ideas, so that they do not fear this change, or they do not fear failure. Okay. Okay, so we come to now again when I talk about the environment and the school culture. Okay, what is a school culture? And the school culture is nothing but the beliefs and the assumptions that we live by. Okay, our school works on, so we have a philosophy that we believe in. We have certain beliefs, we have certain assumptions, and of course we experiment, but we also try to ground roots are very strong. We're very grounded to our roots also. So while we're trying to initiate and modernize our processes, some of the beliefs, for example, like I said, the non-negotiables that we have as part of our educational institution should be kept in mind. A supportive school environment that encourages collegiality and collaboration, professional development and growth of all its members will contribute towards shaping a positive school culture. I think that's something that consciously and on a day-to-day basis we need to build this kind of positivity in the institution. When you have a shared sense of mission, then everybody's working together, everybody's improving together. Schools improve best when small successes are recognized and celebrated, something that I already spoke about. Okay. And I found this, this is actually a quote by Steve Jobs. And I remember my son sharing it with Steve, and I thought it was so wonderful. And Steve Jobs said, your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you will know when you find it. And this is something that, I used to say this earlier without really thinking that, it was something that Steve Jobs has spoken about, the love for the work that you do. Every morning, I would do a litmus test for myself. When I wake up in the morning, do I drag myself to work, or do I feel energized and I'm raring to go? I jump out of bed and I'm excited about going to work. I think that's a great test to test yourself whether you are, you're in the right profession, you're doing the right job, you're on the right track, you love what you do. Okay, whether you are excited about going to work, and that's a litmus test I think all of us can do. Okay, there have been days, I know there have been days where I've not felt energized, and where I've felt that maybe I'm dragging myself, and that's when I've started to look at my own what am I doing, why is it that I'm feeling like that, do I have to change something about my routine or the way I'm doing my work, my approach to work, do I need to bring about some change in that? And that has always helped. And oftentimes I have found that I have to get away from my work a little bit, and sometimes I've traveled a little bit, and at the moment I reach the airport, I start to feel I start to feel fresh air, fresh ideas coming into my mind. So sometimes it's important to disconnect from what you're doing with your present work, and let the fresh ideas come in. Okay, and they will come, because sometimes you need that. Okay, so but it's very important that we change. If we're not feeling energized, not enthusiastic about our work, it's very important that we step for a moment, step aside. Pause for a moment and change something about our environment. Okay, sometimes when you innovate, you make mistakes. Again, very, very important for innovation and creative confidence that mistakes will happen. Mistakes will happen. It is best to admit them quickly and get on with improving your other innovations. So very important that we recognize that we will make mistakes, and it's all right to make mistakes, especially with technology. I remember my own journey with technology, that that at the first time when I was asked to type a document, I typed it all in bold and in caps. And when I was asked to change it, I didn't know how to change the case. And I actually deleted the whole thing and typed it all over again, because I was very scared that my students would get to know that I had made a mistake and I didn't know how to correct it. Okay, so it's very important that we accept our mistakes, and we accept that mistakes will happen, and we will admit them, and then we will try to improve upon them. Again, very important that we also recognize that we need to improve. We can't just say it's all okay, I made a mistake and it's all right to make a mistake, it's all right to fail. No, it is good to, yes, it is all right to fail, but you have to get up and move on, and you have to learn from that mistake, you have to learn from that failure and move on. Okay? If a school does not stand for something more profound than raising achievement levels, then it probably does not make a memorable difference to teachers, students, or parents. So we are not just about academic accomplishments, okay? And we all know that, okay? So I have often felt that, why education is one of the most rewarding professions to be in compared to any other profession or any corporate sector, any company that you see, or any other sector that you see, because education is one sector where you can keep adding more and more dimensions. You could be bored with maybe doing sports, and you can move into music, or you go to do dance or drama and bring new dimensions into your classroom, into your school every single day. So there is no scope for monotony to set in. So you can keep adding more and more dimensions to education, because it can absorb, and it is actually lends itself to so many new dimensions. Okay. And which brings me to the next slide, which is again one of my most favorite slide. And again, something that took time for our school to do, about opening our minds and our hearts and our what should I say, our portfolios, our lesson plans, to sharing with others. Okay, and I love this phrase, okay, which I came across some years ago, and I think it's so relevant today. In the past, you were what you owned. So we owned our lessons, we owned our lesson plans, we owned our PPTs, okay, and we would not want to share them. We owned our own strategies. Okay, today you are what you share. So today your value is more by what you share and not what you own. Okay, and that's a big shift that has happened. We're living in a sharing economy. Okay, where the more you share, the more you grow. I think that's something that which educators have to embrace, have to imbibe, have to live by. And I see that happening in the last 1.5 years. Like I said, this has been a great, one of the biggest rewards or the biggest side effects of the pandemic, the positive effects or the externality of change that we saw in the last 1.5 years. There's so much sharing and outpouring of ideas has happened. I think, the technology, we were able to reach larger audiences across the globe, and so much of sharing has happened across the world. So I move on to next again. A journey of an educator, of a practitioner, and for me over 3.5 decades hasn't been easy. Okay, there have been challenges, there have been paradoxes which I have had to deal with, there have been dilemmas that I have had to find answers to, and again, something which, again, these are all dilemmas which I personally experienced. Okay, so again, nothing from a textbook, and one of the things that I learned was that management books or business schools do not teach you certain lessons of leadership, which I actually learned on the job, on the ground. Okay, the first one being that nobody should be sitting in ivory towers. Nothing can happen if we sit in ivory towers, if we just preach, if we just talk and we do not walk the talk. It's very important that we walk the talk. Okay, again, ethical dilemmas that we've all kind of we face in our lives. I think on a very, very regular basis as leaders. I feel that oftentimes I am not sure what is the correct answer to do, and then you have to kind of look within you and look for answers. And I found this quote very, very very inspiring. Einstein said, if your head tells you one thing and your heart tells you another, before you do anything, decide first whether you have a better head or a better heart. Okay, so I mean, I know that we often as leaders, as heads of schools, we have to deal with this question of what is ethical, and I think it's not just in education; it's in every sector. So and we do know that ethics has become a very important subject, even in business schools. So something that if you live by ethics, if because especially for educators who are almost like role models for their students, it's so important that we deal with ethical dilemmas in the right manner. Okay, so dealing with ambiguity is another paradox and another challenge that I thought was very you know which I face very often, because sometimes you don't know what is the right thing to do, and there's an ambiguity about the situation. Our dilemma is that we hate change and love it at the same time. What we really want is for things to remain the same but get better. So how do we deal with ambiguity? And again, takes me back to the VUCA world that we are living in. Again, at school, a culture which is promoting new ideas. We're talking about innovation. We're talking about building confidence. So we're talking about open minds, and we're talking about flexibility. Okay, and oftentimes I was asked this question: why is it if you're going to be flexible so often and you're going to change things around so much, right? Then what kind of a how do we appear to a school? How do we appear to the outsiders, to parents and to students, if we don't have a let's say a school policy on certain things? Okay, for example, we've never had a school calendar with very rigid timelines. We've just kind of given a time frame and a kind of an interval and said, or a range, and said, from this period to this period we'll be in examination, or this period to this period we will be having an event. So because I always felt that the more flexible I am in my day-to-day processes, the more I will be able to innovate and accept change. Okay, so in times of change you need to be flexible, you need to be agile. Okay, so where there is this dilemma, flexibility versus rigidity versus consistency. And my answer to this question always has been that we are flexible, not rigid, but we are consistent in the way we think about our children. We are consistent about our philosophy with respect to education. We are consistent with respect to the policy, with respect to our to education and our children. Okay, so there is a difference between rigidity and consistency. Okay, so we are not rigid, but we are consistent. Stay committed to your decisions, but stay flexible in your approach. I think that kind of answers a lot of questions that we do face, especially when we're trying to change things around and we're trying to cope with change. Okay, the next one that I thought, which is very, which I find very, I've faced very often, is again when you are flexible and you are allowing freedom to change. Okay, and you're giving freedom for innovation. There's a dilemma, or there's a trade-off between autonomy and freedom for innovation. Okay, so again, and this is not just for teachers, it's not just for principals and leaders. I think it's also for children. Okay, we give them freedom, and today the children demand freedom. Okay, they need freedom for them to flourish, to grow, to evolve. Okay, and my constant refrain is that yes, we will give you freedom, but freedom comes with responsibility. Okay, so and you have to take ownership of that responsibility. You have to take ownership of your actions. So it's very important to give them children freedom, but to also have the right checks and balances in place so that they are able to learn to deal with freedom, to work in a free environment, to grow in a free environment, and yet be responsible, and yet be committed, and yet be follow the discipline that is required of a student. Okay, personal versus professional. I don't know how often any of you have faced it, but I have found it very often, because you see what happens is that we're all human beings, and we all have our own personal biases or personal or our own thought process, and sometimes it can conflict with the professional. Okay, and I've had this dilemma. I've faced this dilemma often, very often, and I've again looked within myself, and the answer that I tell myself is that, or give to myself, is that there is no individual greater than the organization. The organization is bigger than any individual. And if we keep that in mind, okay, we'll never have this conflict between personal, or we'll be able to deal with. Of course, a conflict might come, but we'll be able to deal with the personal versus professional dilemma in a more professional manner. Okay, and of course, something that everybody knows, how power can be misused, how authority can be abused, and how it's so important, therefore, to remain humble, to remain grounded, and to be always grateful. I think that's something that again has. I think gratitude is another term, is another value that I have started to live by more and more in recent times, to be grateful for and to feel blessed, to grateful for all the blessings that we have in our lives. Okay? An institution which deals with so many human beings, and we have multiple relationships. I think in education, when we say we have multiple stakeholders, it's like we have a relationship with parents, we have a relationship with our colleagues, we have a relationship with students. There are multiple levels of relationships operating in an educational institution. We have relationship with the management, and so very important, therefore, that we build a culture of empathy. We accept our vulnerabilities. We accept others' vulnerabilities. I think that's another thing that's very that has become extremely important, is vulnerability and accepting vulnerability, and not looking at it as a failure that's going to stay with you, or as a weakness that's going to stay with you. We're all human, and we're all vulnerable. And also there will be times of discomfort, there will be times of disequilibrium, and but like I said, after the disequilibrium, we will reach a new higher equilibrium. Of course, management versus leadership. And I think, again, leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about taking care of those in your charge. I think that's a beautiful way of approaching. And when I talk about leadership, it's not just about a leader of a school. It's a teacher being in class and leading a class. It could be a school leader, a student leader, but we need to give this kind of a message to even our student leaders. Okay, teamwork, of course. We all know how important it is to collaborate, to share, to be part of a team. Failure versus success. And I think, again, like I said, it's important to fail, but it's also important not to stop at failure. That failure has to propel us forward. It has to take us to a next milestone. Okay, it has to be the seed for further growth. Okay, so we have to learn from our failure, not just sit back and get complacent and say that it's okay, because oftentimes we tell children failure is a stepping stone to success, but it doesn't just stop at failure. It needs to be worked upon. We learn from our failures and we move on. So success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is a courage to continue. I think that's very important, that we don't just stop at failure. We have the courage to continue. That's important. Opportunities, again, something which I talk about to students a lot. Okay, and again, something that kind of it becomes a part of our culture, because as a school, children get many opportunities to take part in many events, to grow, to evolve, And all of us, I think opportunities will come our way, and there are children who shy away from opportunities, okay, or who are lazy to make use of an opportunity. And I feel that the biggest regret I would think is in my life, if I don't use an opportunity, the regret that I have of not using the opportunity is bigger than the regret I would have from failing in an opportunity. I take an opportunity, I fail, it's fine. But if I don't take the opportunity, the regret that I feel of an opportunity lost is much, much bigger. So I think that's a lesson that I share even with my students, that opportunities do not knock again and again. Making a big life change is pretty scary, but know what? What's even scarier? Regret. Regret is even scarier. So take that opportunity, take that step forward. When change happens. Constraints and creativity. I've already spoken a lot about how I look forward to challenges and constraints. When I first saw our school in Santa Cruz, and I belong to Delhi, and I worked in some of the best institutions in the country and abroad, and everywhere schools had huge campuses, beautiful campuses. I mean, that's what schools are always known for. The infrastructure of a school is always something that one takes for granted, And when I came to Mumbai and I looked at my school and I said, how can anything ever happen in this small building? Okay? And then I asked myself, okay, so this is a challenge. If this is the building that's given to me, what can we do? What can we do within this small building? And you will not believe me, those small, narrow corridors, okay, that they become corridors. I call them the corridors of power, because that's where I meet, I brush against some students, and I'm listening to, I'm eavesdropping on some conversations. I get to know my children so well, and that was the opportunity in that constraint of a narrow corridor. Okay, so look at the constraint again as an opportunity to grow, to find new ways of embracing the constraint and overcoming the constraint and becoming more creative. So I love this quote: you are confined only by the walls you build around yourself. So actually, when I started working in this institution, and Santa Cruz, the school building, and Mumbai city as a whole, okay, and armed with the technology, the advantage that technology gave me, I started to believe that there is no box that will limit us. Okay, so it was not just about going beyond, outside the box. For me, we actually, in our school, we feel there is no box that limits us. There isn't any box. So, and I've seen the teachers kind of really, I remember teachers, when they first join and they say, where is the library? Where is the dance room? Where is the music room? And we say, it's all here, within the classroom, within the corridors, on the terrace. That's it. And then I see the teachers actually dipping into their own reserves, okay, and digging out and pulling out so much of talent. Okay? And the joy that you get when you see that you've been able to do something even in those limited resources. That joy is absolutely incomparable to anything else. Okay? Checks and balances, like I said, when we talk about freedom that we give to our students, we give to our teachers, we give to ourselves, we also have to remember that there are checks. We have to keep in mind checks and balances, and there is everything in life is about balance. Okay. Yeah. Again, this is something that I feel very strongly about, is about being real. Okay. And if we have challenges, we are vulnerable. We accept our vulnerabilities, we accept our limitations, and we try to work on them. So again, something that's a lesson, that's a culture. As a school, we believe that we are a very, very real school, okay? And that we are all work in progress. Okay, we are not perfect. We have our weaknesses, we have our limitations, we have our vulnerabilities, but we are working on them, and we are all. I always say we are all work in progress, and so there is always scope to grow, to learn, to evolve, and to move on. I think that, and recently our students had done a TEDx youth program, and the topic they chose was blind spots. And we actually invited us alumni to speak on this topic. And I kept thinking, what is it that the children are going to speak about? And each one has approached the topic of blind spots from the area in which they're specializing, whether it's architecture or somebody is a scientist or somebody is an entrepreneur, and the perspectives they brought to the topic of blind spots. And I really felt that they've actually used this whole argument about we being work in progress so beautifully, that we all have our blind spots, but we work on those blind spots, and it actually provides us an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to evolve. Okay, so again, I think I'll stop here because I've spoken a lot, and there is something on innovation, a section, but I don't think it's really. I think we're talking about building a culture and innovation. Everybody kind of knows. But what if there are any questions that anybody would like to, maybe any remarks, anything that you would want to share at this point of time? I'd be happy to share my journey, my experiences, my experiments with education.
So, friends, any questions?
Yeah, and I'm going to go to
I must say, we did not realize the passage of time, ma'am. You were right saying that this is the age-old wisdom, and in today's time, it is all the more applicable with the VUCA world that we experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for brushing the dust away. As educators, we need to reconnect with the basic learnings we all had when we stepped into education, and we need to keep doing this very often. I would like to know from the participants if they have any questions or any thoughts to share. Ma'am, meanwhile, if you could just throw a little light
on the model. Okay, so some years ago we were actually doing a pilot with iPads and wondering if iPads should be introduced to school. And this was the time when CC happened. We had started to experiment with Google apps. Okay, the Google Docs and Google the entire suite of apps. And so we had started, like I said, a whole new world opened up for us, the whole world of technology, of the internet that opened up for us. And I came across Khan Academy. Okay, and initially I thought Khan Academy was, our Salman Khan, our actor, and I thought maybe he started a dance academy. I mean, that's the level of ignorance one has about, things happening in the world. And then my son said, "Have you looked at what Khan?" And I said, "Yeah, I think maybe it's a dance school." And then he said, "You're very wrong. Please go and do some research." And then I actually listened to Sal Khan from Khan Academy, his TED talk, and he was talking about how he had created a video lecture on a topic in mathematics for his cousin who was in another city and who was having a problem with this maths concept. And he actually created a video on that topic and shared it with his cousin, and she found it was very useful for her. And because it was on YouTube, posted it on YouTube, he, over a period of time, found a whole lot of views of his video, of his lecture. And that's when he realized that, education, learning or teaching can happen through creating video content. Okay, and there was a TED talk, and actually he then got noticed by Bill Gates, who found that his own children were using Khan Academy. So he had started to make more videos like that. And there were several videos of Salman Khan. They were not called Khan Academy at that time. And so many of his videos had so many views, and Bill Gates' children were using those videos. And that's when he started to find out a little more, and he invested in his company, in his whole initiative. And that's when he started Khan Academy. So when we started to look at the content in Khan Academy, it was all about, how do you watch content, you take ownership of your learning. One of the challenges which my teachers told me was that children, especially older children, do not take ownership of their learning. So we tell them to do something, they will do it, but on their own, they don't. They are not. They're very passive learners. Right? They're very passive in class. They come, they they listen to the lecture, and go back, and they assume that they have learned it. The teacher assumes they've learned it, but they're very passive in class. Okay, there's a one-way instruction happening from the teacher to the students. So there's a direct instruction in class, which is through the lecture. Children are quiet, and we don't know whether they've learned anything or not. So, Salman Khan was speaking about this concept of flipped classroom, where he said that let the children watch the video of the lecture at home. Let the lecture go home, okay? And the children have already seen the lecture. They've got some information, some knowledge about the topic. They come to class, and now the teacher does not give a lecture on the topic. The teacher takes off from the lecture now. Because invariably, we always found teachers saying that we don't have time to do more discussion in class. We don't have time to take up higher order thinking skills in class, okay? Because by the time we finish the lecture, we have to move on to the next topic. So they always felt there was a shortage of time, okay? So he said, flip the class, flip this whole learning, take the lecture home. And normally the teachers will give a lecture in class and give homework to the students to do at home. So exercises to be done at home. It's only when the students start to work on the problems or the exercises at home, they realize that there are some gaps in their learning. And that's when they need to help them to understand, to make sense of the problem that they are trying to solve. So the teacher is required to help solve problems rather than in the lecture. So he said, reverse it, flip it. So you watch the lecture at home. In class, you discuss the topic, and you help the student to handle questions of thinking, and be with the with the student. So be the sage by the side, right? Rather than the right. So again, this is the philosophy of the flipped model. So what happened was we did a pilot with Khan Academy, and we found that the maths content was really good. Okay, but we couldn't find enough content mapped to our curriculum in subjects like physics, chemistry, and other subjects. So we decided that we'll create our own video content, okay, and share it with the children. Children were watching it at home, and when they came to class, the teachers were supposed to take up the topic from that level where the children already have some knowledge of the topic, and they are able to do that much more in class, have more interaction in class rather than a one-way direct instruction, a lecture going from the teacher to the student. That is the philosophy of the flipped classroom. Now, of course, we made the video content, and we collaborated with a technology edtech company, somebody who was also very passionate about teaching as a subject, about teaching in the way that children would learn better, engage better. So they were good with technology, they were good with the content, and so we built some really great video content which we shared with our children. The challenge came from students, one, not from the parents. The parents, like I said, once you've built trust with the children, with the parents, and you've said that there are non-negotiables, and you've kept those insights, then you're able to experiment. So the parents were fine. The challenge came from students who had we've conditioned them to think that they come to class and they only have to listen to the teacher and not interact and not question and not ask or do anything more than just listening, right? That's a challenge for us, which surprised us. The second bigger challenge that really stumped me was the challenge coming from teachers. Because by default, historically, teachers have always given a lecture in class. Okay? It's changed now with the way we are now interacting with students online. Okay? Teachers have evolved now. But when we introduced the flipped model, that was a big challenge that we faced. How do we make sure that teachers are also empowered? So when we bring about change, right, we have to ensure that we we empower our teachers through maybe workshops or professional development programs, but we need to actually upskill the teachers too, right? So we can't just bring about change and throw them we have to have teachers while bringing about the change. So that was a big learning for us. Okay, so we then of course looked at the technology, and like when I said, when I traveled to for my Google discussion, my panel discussion, I met with this person who introduced me to a company called what is it? Something which everybody is using. Something for where you put the video on con and then you can keep adding questions. I forget the name now. Anyway, everybody uses it. In fact, it's an app. But used to that where no, it's something with E. I forget that. What happened was that in order to ensure that the children were actually engaged with the video content, there was this app which was available, software available, where you could load your video on YouTube, and you could keep inserting questions after every few seconds or minutes, so that the child has to answer those questions. Then only you can move forward to the next segment of lesson of the video. Okay? So technology, again, like I said, technology solutions will keep coming in. So as educators, if we experiment with technology, it is at the intersection of the teacher, the educator in the classroom, the technologist who has the know-how, okay, and a spirit of innovation, right? Somebody who facilitates this. These put together will bring about change. Okay? It's at the intersection of all this that change will happen. Like if you see what has happened now during this last 1.5 years, I remember our first challenge when we started online classes. On the first day itself, we started with the Google Meet, and we found that the children were, removing their friends from the Meet. Okay, they were removing. In fact, they removed the teacher from the Meet itself. Okay, so it was like throwing the teacher out of the classroom. So that was a challenge because Google Meet did not have those features where you could look at the maybe stop or prevent students from or outsiders from entering the Google Meet. Those checks and balances were not in place. So as we went along this journey of last 1.5 years, if you see, technology companies have also added more and more features to their platforms. Okay, new solutions have come in. Okay, so as they're getting feedback from teachers or from educators who are actually working with the technology, they are also improving their product. Okay, so change will happen where everybody works, collaborates together, and we come up with better and better solutions as we move forward. And that's in every with respect to everything, not just with technology. Okay, so flipped is something that we did, and now of course it's more of an attitude. It's like, how do I approach my teaching? How do I approach my learning? So the bigger change was not the technology, it was not the model. It was, how do we change the minds of the teachers, that they were, again, I spoke about dealing with ambiguity. So the teacher's challenge was that if I engage in a discussion with my students in class, what if the child asks me a question and I'm not able to answer, right? So that was a big kind of a restraint for teachers to experiment with new ideas. Okay, that is why we go back to the default lecture method, that I will keep talking and I'll keep giving the lecture, and there is no scope, and I finish my time in class, and there's no really discussion. There is no scope for a situation where I'm not able to answer the students' questions, right? Or I'm not able to navigate the discussion. Again, navigating a discussion is also a very big skill, right? So we have not empowered our teachers with that skill. Okay? So that needs to go hand in hand with if I'm introducing the flipped model, I have to now train and empower my teachers too. So we then started to work on how do we, so our focus shifted from the video content to now, how do we make our teachers feel confident in class to use the model, and so we said, okay, so you have had, like, for example, we have these huge question banks that we prepare for our students, right? Or the board papers where there are these higher order thinking questions, okay, which we give to the children, but we never discuss them in class. So we said, okay, bring out those higher order those hot questions, and just answer this, just kind of solve them in class. That itself is one step forward, right? So take baby steps forward, and that is how you will be able to. But you have to get your hands dirty. I mean, when you change, when you bring about change, your hands will get dirty. You have to be prepared for that, right? You have to be.
I think this was an excellent example of building that culture for innovation,
exactly,
and creative confidence.
Yes.
How the challenges would always come up, but how you approach it is all that's going to matter. So thank you for this example, ma'am. It relates so well to today's topic. And I think this was an additional nugget of gold that the participants had to take back with them. Are there any questions? I think the explanation, the way you have explained, it made the whole scenario come up alive before each one of us as educators. We could put ourselves in the place of that teacher and you as the leader and the students as well, the parents as well. So we could relate to the situations that you have mentioned throughout your presentation and this one, the last one with flipped learning. And like you said, it's all about the approach, getting over that fear, being willing to deal with the challenge.
Yeah, I think one last thing that I would say is that, when we are working with students and teachers, we have to remember that each one is bringing something to the institution. So students are not passive. And I've seen that happening, especially in the last few years. I find that today children don't want to just consume content, okay? Or they don't want you to organize something for them and say, okay, now you take part in this. So it happened with us. We were trying to do a creativity festival for our students of grade 11 and 10, 11 and 12. And we were so excited. We planned everything, that all the activity that we would do. And then one little bird came and whispered in my ear that, the children are not planning to come. And I was so heartbroken because I said, I cannot believe that I have to sell something which is going to be such fun for the children and they don't want to come. And when I started talking to the children, I realized that what was hurting them was that they were not involved. They were not engaged in this process of organizing the event, right? So they wanted to be the organizers. They wanted to be at the helm of affairs. They wanted to be included in the, in the idea sharing and all of that. And so something that, today they want to be they want to be part of their education process, right? So they're not just satisfied with consuming. They want to create.
And they come up with such wonderful ideas that we can't even think of.
Yeah, look at the Model United. I think the MUN is a perfect example of a student program and how well they do it,
Right from planning to execution.
Yes.
Just amazing.
Yes.
So we being a young school, we have just had 5 chapters of RRIS MUN, but they have been an incredible journey. I would say the biggest lesson was that children can do much better than we at times.
Yes.
There's so much to learn from them.
Yeah, and so it is important to keep feeling the pulse of our kids,
True.
And we have to keep our ears to the ground and say, okay, so what is the change that you see in the children? Because some years ago, this was not a challenge. I mean, children were okay with, teachers organizing or the school organizing something for them. Today, it's changed. So we have to constantly keep, revisiting our own philosophy, our own way of working with the kids, Yeah.
True. And rather than thinking of doing things in a particular way, it's better to explore. And ultimately, the school is the playground of a child.
Absolutely.
The festival is for the child. Let the child think, let the child plan. Why should it have a particular, a fixed?
Yes.
You should not be stuck with rigid ideas. Again,
True.
this is what your presentation was about. So being flexible, giving more leeway to students for making mistakes and learning from them. I think you have spoken about such relevant examples. Thank you so much, ma'am. It has re-energized all of us to
my pleasure and
wear our growth mindset caps.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I have done is made the use of this session in 2 ways. Learned about flipped learning, which could have been one topic by itself exclusively for a talk. So thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us the tips and
pleasure.
Thank you. You have equipped us of building that culture in our own classrooms and schools. Thank you so much. Wish you all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. And you're doing an amazing, amazing job with this series, really.
I
In
look
fact,
forward to meeting you personally.
I missed a few and I binge watched, all of them. Really like, very
Yes,
nice.
we have had wonderful speakers.
Yeah.
I thank all the Aadharshila speakers. Some of them were a part of today's talk. They didn't want to miss it at any cost. You were the reason for attracting all of them here today. And there are many of our well-wishers who have been with us. Thanks to all of you, especially the teachers, the director, principal of BDM International Kolkata. They are our patrons right from the first talk. We are so indebted for your support and love. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
For you, ma'am, on
All
the
the
work
best.
front and on your personal front. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Wish you
Thank
success
you.
and happiness. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Everyone, see you next Monday at the 61st talk of Aadharshila with another inspiring educator. Thank you. See you all. Good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Pranam, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.